We're here today with a retired professional basketball player who was a two-time back-to-back NBA MVP, an 8-time NBA All-Star, a 4-time member of the 50-40-90 Club, and led the league in assists 6 times. None other than the talented Steve Nash. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
You're welcome, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, first things first, Steve, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the dance moves that we all saw on social media while you were on vacation with your family, your daughters, and Dirk Nowitzki. I would love to hear how your experience with TikTok has been going so far.
I think I'm retiring from TikTok. I have a twin 15-year-old daughter. So when lockdown started back in March, it was like, we were spending so much time together. It was a way for us to connect. I had big hopes. I did a couple TikToks and then they disowned me. So, so I think TikTok's over for me. It was with the best of intentions, but it just, I don't know if it wasn't executed that well.
Exactly. Well, if you had to choose between you and Dirk, who would you say did better?
I mean, I'm a way better dancer than Dirk. That's easy. But everyone knows that.
I love that. And Steve, I have to mention the other day I was listening to a hip hop artist by the name of Gunna, and he has a song named Dirty Diana, in which he uses your name in the chorus. I don't know if you know this song, but I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to know, how does it feel to know the impact that you have on people all over the world when it comes to what you have accomplished throughout your career?
I mean, it's incredibly flattering, to be, to have an impact on people, but to be in a bunch of hip hop songs. I think, part of it is maybe having an impact. Part of it is that Nash rhymes with a lot of things easily. So primarily cash, but it is flattering, and I'm humbled. Hopefully, I'm not getting too old to be name checked. You got to think about it. What did I stopped playing 7 years ago. So, every year, less and less people know I even played basketball.
Yeah. Well, your name hasn't gone away, that's for sure. It's still relevant just as much as it was when you were playing. So,
thank you.
Yep. Now, Steve, you grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa, with your father, who was a professional soccer player, and your mother, who was a big sports fan. In what ways would you say your parents impacted your life when it comes to your journey with sports?
Yeah. Well, my parents are from London, the UK, mostly London. When they got married, they moved to South Africa. I was born there, but when I was 11 months old, they didn't want me to grow up with the apartheid, back in '74. So we ended up moving to Canada. So I grew up in Canada before going to Santa Clara. But my parents were my dad loved sports, loved all sports, played, semi-pro soccer, I would say. My mom played. Sports weren't as common for women at that era in the UK, but she played netball, which is like a kind of a Commonwealth form of basketball with no backboards, and you play with a soccer ball. Anyways, that's for another podcast. But they were both just more than anything. My dad loved it, so we spent a lot of time in the backyard just playing whatever. Mm-hmm. He was able to teach us a lot about sportsmanship and being, I think having the right characteristics, having the right behaviors. So that was important. And my mom was just incredibly encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
She we never had a bad game, or if we did, she'd be like, so what? You got another one. So I just think my parents created a really safe environment. My dad never, even though he was an athlete, he didn't really critique our play as much as he did our character. So
I like that.
He would be more like, you weren't working hard, or you were late, or you were talking back, or you weren't listening, things like that. He didn't very often say like, well, you should have done this. Mm-hmm. He was more like, he left that to us and just made sure that we were learning the right characteristics.
Yeah. Well, those are definitely the elements that also matter to sports, but probably go unnoticed at times. So that's good that he definitely taught you guys in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, is that like having the right characteristics allows you to go a long way. You
Mm.
know, you can have all the talent, but if you don't have the right characteristics or understand those lasting character traits or details, you know,
Exactly.
that can unravel a career. So, you know, I think that was important on that kind of human side of becoming a professional.
Exactly. And it definitely paid off having them as mentors, especially with your sports career. Now, you and I are both Santa Clara alums, and I've heard the story that Santa Clara and its head coach at the time, Dick Davey, was the only D1 program to show interest and to offer you a scholarship. Although at the time, Santa Clara may not have been your first school you thought of attending, what were the main things you came to love about the university?
Yeah, I mean, I really had never heard of it. Um, and growing up where I grew up, I mean, in Canada it just wasn't really a common school. And
Mhm.
so, but when I got there, you know, one, I was grateful that I had an opportunity to play Division I basketball. You know, the alternative for me would have been to stay in Canada and play collegiate basketball there, or to go to junior college out in the States. You know, I was grateful that I got the opportunity. And we had you know, I know our conferences and our schools are mid-major, but we had a big schedule. You know, played a
Mhm.
lot of big teams, so you got opportunities and exposure in that way. The school itself, you know, is a great academic school, a great part of the world. The Bay Area is incredible. You know, the community of Santa Clara, being that it is a small school, you know, is a very tight-knit fabric that kind of goes on through the generations. So it gives you a kind of a familial feeling, and you feel like you belong, and you, especially as a basketball player, you connect with the alumni, you know,
Mhm.
going back. It's a small group, you know, it's not a huge school. And so there was a real nice connection of family environment. And I think that's what I, you know, came to love about the school, is that it really felt personal.
Mhm. Well, it definitely worked out for you in going to Santa Clara. But before choosing Santa Clara, your St. Michael's head coach, Ian Hidlay, actually reached out to several Pac-12, ACC,
Mm.
and Big Ten schools on your behalf. And most of them seemed to be disinterested. Did you ever
Mm.
use that rejection as motivation moving forward?
Yeah, you know, that wasn't really my style. Like I never really took slights
Yeah.
that personal. I feel like I always had a bigger picture in mind. I definitely always felt like an underdog, you know, but I definitely was looking at the big picture, that I have to, you know, I have to make a plan. I have to stick to it every day. And if I continue to do that diligently with passion and energy and discipline, if
Mhm.
I stack days on top of each other and weeks and months and years on top of each other, you know, it's not a race. You know, I can get there, and I'm not going to beat some of the guys that are already there or are better than me at this stage, because they are just more advanced and
Yeah.
physically more advanced, perhaps. In most part, it was physical, but you know, they're just more advanced, perhaps in every way. So how am I going to get there? How am I going to compete? How can I match and overtake them one day? And that was by playing a long game, you know, and having a real plan that I had to stick with over a long period of time.
Mhm.
You know, nothing was going to come quick to me. You know, I wasn't very explosive. I wasn't big or strong. I was skilled, and I had to refine my skills,
Mhm.
you know, as much as I possibly could, and continue to just become slightly, you know, more athletic. I think my athletic traits, you know, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I have some great athletic traits: balance, coordination, timing, vision, you know, elusiveness, things that make sense to me, you know, skill development. But they're not the types of things, I think, that, you know, without the explosiveness,
Yeah.
size of strength, you know, it's a different thing in the NBA. I think
Yeah.
we rate athleticism in the NBA too often just on size, strength, and explosiveness.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of ways to have an impact. So
Mhm.
for me, I knew that wasn't going to be the way I was going to close the gap. I had to close the gap through perseverance and discipline, and sticking to the plan that I had for myself, which is basically just getting better all the time, and staying with it, and not giving away days, and not giving away workouts by not having my heart invested fully in it.
Yeah.
So by being fully invested in each workout and sticking to the plan long term, I was able to close a lot of that ground that perhaps, you
Mhm.
know, it didn't appear possible at the outset.
Mhm. And I think you bring up a great point. It's not a race, you know, it's more like a marathon. You always have to continue to put in the work. And I think I'm similar to you in a way where, you know, I wasn't the most athletic, and, you know, pretty much all the schools that were looking at me were mid-major at the time, because high majors were scared to take a chance on me because I didn't have the athleticism. I wasn't 6'4" or taller. So I think that's important. I think that's something I try to preach to the kids that I know in my area growing up,
Mm.
understanding that if they're not those, one in a million athletes that come out of nowhere, then you're probably going to have to continue to put in that work and lay the groundwork and understand that you're not looking at just what's right in front of you. You're looking at the bigger picture.
Right.
I see that come full circle now because I continue to see my game get better than those guys that they were talking about 5 years ago that were
Right.
crazy athletic, and pretty much most of them fell off. So, I think you bring up a great point with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can see how you can relate. And you played a lot more too.
Yeah.
A lot more undersized too, trying to find, be able to handle the ball handling responsibilities eventually, but starting as a two set you back. But then as you continue to persevere, you were able to close a lot of that ground as I was.
Exactly. Thank you. And, I mentioned if you ever use those colleges as motivation, but I know you might have used a former teammate of yours as motivation, Phil von Buchwald. During a mandatory study hall, you told Phil that you were going to make it to the NBA, and Phil said that you wouldn't, and he even bet you $100 that you wouldn't. Long story short, you obviously ended up making it to the NBA, and you exceeded everybody's expectations. And when Phil tried to give you the $100 at the team banquet, you actually told him to use that money towards a plane trip to come watch you next season. Looking back on this story, what was your motivation to make it to the NBA? And for the basketball players and other people listening, what do you think they can learn from that story?
Yeah, I mean, it's really intrinsic, It's not about Phil at all. Like, he never really motivated me to make it. I was just, sharing with a teammate that I thought I could trust, that like I believe that I can do this. You can't say that to everyone because a lot of people are going to laugh you out of the gym or think you're crazy, and it's just not worth like trying to preach to people. Just prove it. Actions speak louder than words. So I wasn't much for being like, hey man, I'm going to the NBA, just letting you know. If to my closest people around me, I would say like, yeah, I really want to do that. I think I can do it. And there's probably a handful of stories, because I didn't tell everyone that, but of people and teammates that probably were looking at me sideways when I said that. And I remember some of them, but they were kind. No one was like, Phil was kind of like, you're crazy. I think him coming from France was like, that's impossible. Like, it's so far from France at that time, in the 90s, from France to the NBA, now it's common, but, he was just like, and you? No. And so like, that's a big leap. I felt like I had a plan and I had some tools that I could refine and I could get there. But I understood clearly, like, not everyone's going to share that vision. I was taking it, obviously, you think you're right, but I had reasons to think I was right. I was like, I really can develop into an elite shooter, elite ball handler, elite passer. If I can catch up like a little bit on quickness and elusiveness and continue to gain and understand. I had a good feel for the game. So you add those things up and I get a little more athletic and, a little more deceptive, add a few skills or dynamic nature to solve problems. I thought I could get there. So to simply put it, it's innate, that desire to want to do it and to stick with it and to manage tools you have in your basket. Mm-hmm. How can you refine them to be the best they can possibly be? And over time, add a few to it, add some variance, and then the biggest component is mental toughness, which was a big experience for me at Santa Clara. Coach Davey was tough. And, that was the biggest thing where I grew at Santa Clara was being mentally strong enough to handle the pressure he put on you every day, which is the greatest gift he gave me. He was a great coach, X's and O's. He knew everything. Knew his stuff. He knew how to coach a team. He knew how to get the most out of us, all those things. But the demanding nature of playing for him, that just gained thick skin, toughness, able to overcome. And so when I got to the league, guys are going to test you and go at you. That was nothing. Like that's what you come to expect every day because coach is going to go at you every day. So, that was the biggest gift he gave me, probably bigger than any skill I developed in Santa Clara, was just the mental toughness.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great to hear. And I also want to bring up the summer of your senior year campaign when you were splitting your time between playing for the Canadian national team, training in California, where you had the opportunity to play against NBA players like Jason Kidd and Gary Payton. How did you feel as a college kid playing with those high caliber players?
That was a great experience, for me. I feel like it's more common nowadays to find pros to play with and stuff.
Sure.
And maybe it was then, but at the time it felt so far away. And to get an opportunity to work out with Gary and Brian Shaw in Gary's backyard and playing with Gary and Sharunas Marshalunas up at Cal, once or twice, and working out with Jason a few times, it gave me a real insight into what the level is, so it was very, tangible evidence of what it takes. And so I could make that, it wasn't a guess. I was like, oh, okay, well, here's where I need to close this gap. Here's where I need to improve. Mm-hmm. So it was a great experience. It always raises your level if you're tough enough when you play against those types of players that, obviously they're gifted, but they're incredibly competitive. That's the spirit that I think differentiates them from a lot of players. Yes, they're gifted. Yes, they've identified themselves in a group as standing out. But a lot of that comes from that spirit of expectation, standard, and competitiveness that they've had innately, right? That's a lot of it. Because if you think about it, someone who's highly competitive and demanding, and is innately that way, mm-hmm. You got to think every time they step on the court, that's the way they behave. Yep. So if you think of all the years they played the game, they're seeking a higher standard every day. Mm-hmm. And if you stack all those days on top of each other, you can see the curve of someone who's not like that, is going like this. And the curve of someone who takes that approach every day over time is making a big margin, big gain. So, I learned that from those guys. I knew that I was like that too, but I realized, wow, you have to have ability, mm-hmm. work ethic, and a spirit of competition and demanding nature that is going to push you every day to get better. You can't just go through the motions and expect to get there because you did the work. Exactly. It's not just the work. It's, mm-hmm. it's the purpose, the attitude, the intent of the work, right? Mm-hmm. You and I could do the same homework assignment, for example, and, I got it done. Mm-hmm. Whereas you intrinsically went after every problem. Mm-hmm. And therefore, at the end of it, we both got it done. Mm-hmm. But you've put yourself at a way higher level of understanding the material that's going to lead you to understand the next set of problems in a more, appropriate way. So to continue to grow. So that's kind of the point I'm getting at, is that a lot of top players just have the mentality mm-hmm. that you couple with their gifts, and that's the difference, right?
Yep. And I think that's the great thing for athletes who have the opportunity to be in those type of gyms with those type of players is, one, like you said, you get to see their mentality and their mindset. But two, you also finally get to play against people that are better than you. And then once you finally start playing with them and you realize, oh, wow, I'm kind of hanging in there. Like, I think I can do this. It kind of adds a whole nother level of momentum for you moving forward. So I like that you did that. And I think players coming up should definitely look for opportunities to play against professional players or whoever they can play against that may be better than them at the time, because it'll ultimately show them that they're really not here where they think they are. They can get up to another level. Yeah,
no, I agree. I mean, you might not have a pro, you might not have access to a pro, but I think it's important, especially in this latest generation or two, it's important, if you want to be as good as you can be, to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So never shy away from a challenge because you're scared of people seeing you get beat, or, those are growth opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so put yourself in tough. You go to a gym and there's a guy that's, he's a little bit better than you. And so maybe a lot of guys might be like, or he's worse than you, but he's hungry. Yeah. And you avoid playing one-on-one, or you make an built-in excuse, or you don't try 1,000% because then it shows, well, he beat you and you were trying your best. Mm-hmm. So the winning mentality is to be like, I'm open. I want to play anyone, and I'm willing to lose to anyone because that's going to make me better. Mm-hmm. And so you might not have access to a pro, but you might have access to someone who makes you really uncomfortable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Someone who wants it so bad and they want to take you down because you're better than them. Sometimes just putting the risk of someone that you should beat, mm-hmm. that wants it so bad. Exactly. That can build character and resolve and toughness, or someone who makes you uncomfortable with their speed or their size or their strength. I think I don't want to make a blanket statement here, but I think at times I see less and less of that as the generations go on, where I feel like kids aren't just playing, like, let's play one-on-one. Let's like go at it and get better.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of workout culture, which is great, but at some point you got to compete and you got to play against people, I think, to improve and to develop as a player.
Exactly. And before I move on, you know, you just bring up such great points, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think the moment in life when I realized that, I was in the middle of my high school career and I was playing for an AAU team that I was the best player on. And another AAU team was recruiting me, and they were pretty much the best AAU team in the Chicago area with all the best Chicago athletes and everything. And I was hesitant. So I passed up the first year that the coach wanted me to come play just because I was nervous to go join a bunch of great players.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad talked to me and he told me, he was like, Jared, this team, you know, I know these are all your friends, but they're not helping you anymore. They're not helping you get to where I know you can be at. So ultimately the next year I ended up switching to that team, the Illinois Wolves, and I'm around all these great players. And before you know it, I realized that I should have been here the whole time. And I'm just as good as these players, if not better. So it was just kind of like a realization for me, and it brought everything full circle. So I was happy to go through that moment. And like you said, I hope kids these days can push themselves to put themselves in those type of opportunities where they can grow. So
yeah, that's a great story. I mean, seek uncomfortable scenarios to push you out of your comfort zone. I mean, that's a key component of development, I think, in all areas.
Exactly. Well, Steve, you eventually made it to the NBA, and I think everybody can picture the group photo of the 1996 NBA draft just because of all the talented players that were involved with that draft. However, I want to talk about three players specifically: yourself, Allen Iverson, and Stephon Marbury. In your eyes, with all three of you being great and successful point guards, what would you say was different and unique about the style in which the three of you actually ran the point guard position?
Yeah, I mean, those guys were so good and so talented. Allen, you know, I think comes at it more as a two guard. You know, he handles the ball, and you could call him a point, but he's a scorer. And he was just an incredibly electric player who had, you know, guts and toughness and would attack at all times, fearless. Got to the line a lot, which I think is what really made him the player he was. He was an average shooter, incredible scorer, and getting to the line the way he was so efficient he got to the line so often. I think that's what, you know, made him so difficult to defend. You know, but again, just toughness and willingness to attack at all times, never shied away from it. And he's just an incredible, you know, person and player. And but really came at it as a scoring guard, and just one of the most influential players, you know, we've ever had. Steph was he was an incredibly strong physical guard. He was you know, just a natural strength and explosiveness. He could score and pass. You know, like if Allen's closer to the two and I was closest to the pure one, I think Stephon was right in the middle. And but his power, strength, and overall skill level was outstanding. You know, he could make shots. He could finish with bigs at the rim, take contact. He, you know, could make plays. You know, so just super talented guys who put up big numbers. And you know, had a big influence, I think, on a younger generation.
And for the players who have aspirations to be a point guard like you three, can you explain the difference between being a great floor general versus just being a great ball handler? Because I think sometimes people, they get it construed and they don't really understand the difference.
Well, the line's getting even more blurred nowadays because, you know, we realize that, you know, point guards should put pressure on the defense and score. You know, whereas when I grew up playing, that was not the way to play. I was taught to be a floor general, to make your teammates better, to shoot less and make your shots, to give your teammates more opportunity and more confidence, and to manage your team. You know, nowadays, you know, we realize, well, that's, you know, nice in principle. You know, we really need to attack as guards because the rules and, you know, less physical, less hand checking. So it's really hard to keep guards in front, and they can cause you problems. And also three-point shot we value so much higher now, knowing that its actual numerical value is so high, whereas we always were kind of in denial of that, thinking it was a bad shot from such a long range to shoot a bunch of them. So the game's changed a lot. Having said that, I think there is a commonality in that what we want in today's NBA is positionless basketball, players that can play multiple positions, that can put the ball on the floor, make plays for their teammates, make their teammates better, not just, be a scorer, not just run down and shoot or isolate. It's like, can you create for your teammates? Because that's a separator. Being able to score is good, but it's all or nothing. Being able to score and make a play for your teammates put the defense in a really difficult position. So in a sense, it's almost like floor generals. It doesn't have the value as it did at one point. Now it's almost more like the point is more of a point of attack position rather than an organizer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changing, but I think there are great ball handlers who don't feel their teammates, who don't have a feel for the space and the dynamic on the floor. They just are a little tunnel visioned, although they can be brilliant with the ball. Exactly. A floor general is someone that, whether they're brilliant with the ball or not, is able to organize, think for their team, be the head of the snake in many ways with their attitude and confidence. So I think there's variance, of course, in what's successful. That can be successful at both ends of the spectrum. There's difference in mentality. There's difference in generations and the way the game's played now. But, I would say that what is still relevant is someone having a feel for the game and being able to make a play regardless of what position they're at for their teammates.
Mm-hmm. And I think somebody who embodies everything you just said on the female side is Sabrina Ionescu. She's the first-round pick in this year's WNBA's draft out of University of Oregon. And after watching a few WNBA games, they mentioned a respectable list of former and current NBA players who have reached out to her and want to see her succeed. You were among those respected players that they mentioned. Knowing that you played the point guard position, what impresses you the most about Sabrina's game, and what type of impact do you think she'll ultimately be able to leave on the game?
She could have a huge impact on the game for sure. The what she did in college was so incredible. I think it has generated a lot of curiosity from perhaps basketball fans that weren't WNBA fans. So I think that's really important. First of all, she's a great person. She's tough and competitive. She works hard, loves the game, and she has an incredible skill set and feel. She's crafty. She has good size for a point guard, can guard multiple positions. She, isn't the most explosive, but is great with angles and skill and shot making, finishing, using fakes, space, time. Has incredible vision. So she has tons of tools. But most importantly, she loves the game. She loves to compete, and she'll do the work. So that's like we said, is the difference. When you have that winning mentality, you expect a lot. Mm-hmm. That's the way you are, your nature, your makeup every day. Over time, you're just going to continue to improve. And so I talked to her before her first game. After her first game, she struggled. Mm-hmm. Next game, I think it was.
That second game was crazy.
She had 30 something, 7 and 7, and it felt a lot better for her. I think she sprained her ankle off to a great hot start in the first quarter of her third game and sprained her ankle. But she's unique. She's unique because of her mental makeup, her skill is immense, her vision, her feel, and the way that she loves the game, attacks the game, and trains. She's going to have a huge career.
Yeah. I think in college and in that second game right before she got injured proved that she's going to be a problem for years to come.
Sure.
And talking about Sabrina and talking with you, Steve, you guys are two people that had a relationship with Kobe Bryant. I heard the kind of moving words that you had to say about the great Kobe Bryant. And, of course, we've all seen the NBA community and the entire world mourn over his passing. For a guy like yourself, who's had the opportunity to be around Kobe, not just as opponents, but as teammates, and given the fact that both of you entered the league during the same year, in your own words, can you detail the type of person that Kobe was?
Kobe's a he's just so unique. I mean, he had an incredible desire, confidence. I mean, I mean, an off the charts gifted athlete, but, you know, much more valuable to him and his success and longevity was his desire to win and dominate. And, you know, he was tough. I mean, he was a tough competitor for sure. He was a tough teammate for sure. But, you know, that's what made him who he was. You know, he was unique in that way. He always, you know, found ways like Michael Jordan to find perceived slights to motivate himself, to find new challenges on a daily basis. I still can't believe he's gone. You know, it's such a tragedy. He's so young, and he was beginning an excellent second career in storytelling and business. He also, you know, appeared to just be thriving as a parent, father. You know, it's such a tragedy for so many ways there. But, you know, I don't know if it's shocking or surprising even, but it was incredible to see the reach he had and how many people worldwide he affected and how important and synonymous his name was with basketball and success and fighting for what you want. You know, that was incredible for me to see how many people, you know, valued him in that way around the world. You know, that was immense. I don't know that you could ever predict that it would be so impactful. And sadly, we had to find out, you know, through tragedy. But just an incredible one-off of a human being who accomplished so much in such a short period of time, and it affected millions and millions of people around the world.
He definitely left his mark on this world. And to hopefully bring a smile or a good memory, is there a personal story that you have of Kobe that you can share with us that may be the best story that you can recall?
God, you put me on the spot. You know, I enjoyed being his teammate. You know, the experience playing together. We came in the same draft. We went through our whole careers together. You know, retired more or less within a year of each other, and you know, so we had a lot of common threads, you know, in our life for a long time. I mean, you know, I don't know if I have a story, but like I said, being a teammate was a great experience, but playing against him is what I'll remember. You know, the competition, you know, the demand he had, you know, what he just never took his foot off the gas. And I think to compete with someone like that, you know, that's what you remember. That's the ultimate sign of respect and what I value and remember fondly. You know, I mean, probably hated each other at times. And when you look back, like you love that. That's respect. And you know, that's how it should be in that environment when people want something really bad, they've prepared and worked for it, and they're fighting for it, and it's emotional. You know, you have to compete emotionally too to get up high enough emotionally and yet be in control emotionally. That's exhausting. You know, so that's as important winning or competing there as it is to be in great shape, or you know, to be indefatigable, or you know, to have the skills to perform under pressure. You know, that's just as important. So I really admire him, what he accomplished, and value the fact that I got to compete against him, you know, his entire career and throughout his prime.
And so you brought up how Kobe looked up to Michael. So it's only right that my next question is about Michael Jordan. You had the chance to compete against him, and you even had the chance to ask him for a pair of his shoes during that second meeting of the Bulls versus the Suns, which you ended up getting. But after playing against him and having the chance to watch the Last Dance documentary, were you left with any new insight about MJ or a different perspective of him?
Not really. I mean, he's my hero. You know, I grew up idolizing him. I mean, Isaiah Thomas is who I tried to emulate, and he's my hero as well, but Chicago guy. But MJ was all of our heroes, you know, and so it's a weird dynamic because I think he's the best player to ever play the game, hands down. But am I biased? You know, like, I don't know because he struck me at a time when I was incredibly impressionable and looked up to him. That lasts, I think, longer than if he comes into your life as an adult. But having said that, even if I try to look at it objectively, I just think he was the greatest player of all time. Watching The Last Dance, I didn't realize how he would create perceived slights so often. And I didn't necessarily, I think, formulate this idea, but you could feel it, that he wanted to destroy you. He didn't just want to win. Like, let me get to the finish line first. He's like, I want you to feel this pain and question everything about yourself in relation to me. Like, that dominating personality, not that many people are like that, and I'm not saying that's the way you should be, right? But that's what made him who he was, right? That might be a really hard way to be happy in life, right? But that's what made him incredible. And I would say that having played against so many great players, that's what separated him, is that I feel like everyone was scared of him. Whereas other great players I played against, no one was really scared of them. Yeah. Revered, they respected, admired, but there was a force within Michael that you felt and you feared, and that I've never seen or felt since.
And, for me, watching that documentary, I thought it was great just because obviously I'm younger, and growing up in Chicago, I knew something was cooking. I knew there was, that spirit that was going on, but of course I was too young to understand what was actually going on. So now to grow up and to see this documentary and see what it turned out to be, and to even see all the problems that were going on behind the scenes, I thought that was pretty cool how they brought that all together.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. And so obviously in the documentary, we saw that MJ went through several challenges, even though he won 6 championships. What were some of the challenges you faced throughout your NBA career?
Yeah, I think, for me, my challenges were, I think, getting up to speed with the game, size and speed, the quickness of thought. That's an adaptation that was, I think, bigger in those days, because the world wasn't as small. Now we have so much access online, ability to learn and study things that were just, next to impossible to do with the access to information nowadays. So there was the first, it was that jump, adapting to the size, speed, and speed of thought. Second, I used it as a positive, but I played behind Jason Kidd and Kevin Johnson, 2 all-star guards. So playing time was difficult early, but I used that as an opportunity to learn and challenge myself against those guys. And that was a great experience for me. Then I hurt my back. It's a condition that I still have to manage. I'm fine, but in the end, it was part of why I had to retire. My back was why I had to retire, but the condition, just became one of many in my back that just made it kind of insurmountable to recover, to compete at that level, and to be able to recover to do it again. So, but when I initially hurt my back and had to overcome that was a big challenge. I really struggled my first year in Dallas. I wasn't moving well. So overcoming that and getting a bigger opportunity, more responsibility was the next challenge. There's micro challenges and macro challenges. There's challenges in the face of trying to be consistent every day. Consistent with your work first, but then with your performance second. And that took time and confidence for me. I think I'm known as a great pick and roll player, but that took time. I was effective, I was capable, but to become a great pick and roll player, it took years, to really understand and to figure out what who you are in those situations, what you're capable of, and how you can make the defense pay. And then, challenges from a team perspective, getting over the hump, whether it's getting to the playoffs, getting to the second round, getting to the conference finals. I never got to the finals. I got to the conference finals, I think, at least 4 times. So there's all these collective and individual challenges along the way. And, I think for me, it was a fair, like, if you had to draw, it was a fairly,
Yeah.
It wasn't like this. It was micro dips and overcoming, but constantly a natural progression in some respects. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't like challenges every day. It just means that overall, I put the time and work in to continue to overcome and keep going in the right direction. I never had any major setbacks, other than early in my career with my back. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's about embracing those opportunities. It's about embracing the tough times, knowing that if you stick with it, those will allow you the most growth.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you plateau or you feel like you're not getting better, those are opportunities where if you stick with it, not only do you gain resolve and mental toughness and grow from a mental and emotional standpoint, but you also, that perseverance and overcoming allows you to take a jump or a leap as far as your productivity. So, it's embracing it and realizing that the hard times really what afford you the most,
Exactly.
more so than the wins and the successes.
And hearing you speak to several of these questions, it seems like the theme is trust the process, the notion of trust the process. I know that may seem cliche, but I think it's important for young players to listen to this just because of the fact that you have to understand everything's not going to happen right away. You're laying the groundwork, you're laying the foundation, so that eventually all the work you put in over the years is going to eventually add up and get you to where you want to be.
Absolutely. I mean, it's process over outcome. And if you stick with that process, like I said off the top, if you're disciplined and passionate about it and you put your heart and soul into that process, it's so much better than just doing the process, right? Like you're going to be so much better, but your intent through your process than just saying like, here's my process. I mean, I'm doing it. I make hundreds of shots every day. I lift my weights. I do my practice. No, I think you got to be visualizing and expecting that next leap in performance, right? All continually striving, right? Continually striving. If you're continually striving, that's going to create a toughness, competitiveness, and a refinement that you're not afforded if you're like just getting it done.
Exactly. Well, I like that, and you definitely represent that as your resume consists of a long list of accolades that you've acquired throughout your NBA career, which I mentioned in the intro. Does it ever surprise you to hear those accomplishments, or is it something you've always envisioned happening?
I wouldn't say I envisioned it. I envisioned making it to the league in a sense. I never was like, I'm going to be maybe I thought, can I be a starter? Can I be an all-star? I never was like, oh, I'm going to be MVP one day.
Yeah.
It was about improvement. That's what I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking, I might be like, if I improve here, I can maybe be a starter. If I can improve this, I can maybe be an all-star. But the 99% of that thought was about improving, not about the outcome. So it was like, how can I improve? And I got lost in that instead of like, got to be an all-star, got to be an all-star, got to be an all-star. If you're worried about being an all-star, you're taking your eye off the process theoretically. So, I was always like, oh, okay, I want to be a starter or an all-star or raise my game to that level. What's my process to get there? What's the plan? And then, committing to that absolutely. So it was sticking to the process. It was having a process. It was, again, being 100% committed and disciplined and having high expectations of the way you attack that process.
Yeah. That's huge. I'm going to use that moving forward. So thank you for that. Like 99% get lost in the improvement, be so focused in on the improvement, and you should care less about the outcome. And eventually that's where to take you. I like that.
Thanks.
And speaking of accolades, you're definitely well respected in the United States, as it shows you've been inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. But of course, you're highly respected in your home country of Canada, as you've been inducted into the Canada Sports Hall of Fame as well. In addition to those two achievements, you're still carrying the legacy by holding a senior advisor role with the senior men's national team of Canada basketball. What do you hope and expect to achieve in your role with Canada basketball?
Yeah, but it's really, I'm just here as a resource if they want to call me up and ask to help. I was the general manager for 5 years, dating back to while I was still playing, because it was a pivotal time. We had a lot of young talent, and how can we catch these guys, help them grow individually, and start to build a program? Because, frankly, in that period of time since my group went to the Olympics in 2000, until, 2012 or whatever it was when I got involved. I felt like the meaning, playing for the national team wasn't as meaningful. It had lost that kind of grasp on the generation of players. And so I got involved for that reason. I helped them, donated 5 years in that position. And frankly, I just, someone needed to take it on that was full-time, paid position, that was really driving the thing, whereas I was more, high level, in and out, trying to make it work while I was playing and all those things. So now I'm just here as a resource. It's been an incredible experience. When I came in the league, it was like Bill Wennington, growing up in Montreal, Rick Fox, was born in Toronto, moved to the Bahamas when he was like 2 weeks old, but they were Canadian. And that was huge. Now I think we have 16 to 20, depending on G League call-ups, Canadians in the NBA, second most in the U.S. So that's just an incredible turn of events in the last 20 years. So it's been really fun to watch how a continual flow of talent coming into the NBA from Canada. It would be amazing if those guys can come together and build a team. I mean, we're talking about an extremely talented team. Talking about, look at what Jamal Murray and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander are doing. You look at Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark, R.J. Barrett, Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell, Trey Lyles. You got Corey Joseph and Tristan Thompson now as vets. Andrew Wiggins. We can keep going. There's more. There's terrific players all around. If everyone committed to play, we're cutting very good players. Exactly. Which is never the case, So I would like for those guys to create a culture and a sense of connectivity and meaning to play for the country. It is different these days. These guys have so much access and opportunity that it's hard. When I was coming up, frankly, like, the national team was a great opportunity for me to develop as a player. They have tons of opportunities to develop as players, right? They can work out with the best player on their respective teams, or, you could probably find where the best players in the league are and work out with them. It's a big commitment playing for your country. You got to spend time away from your family, traveling. But I would just say that one of the greatest, most rewarding parts of my career, the best experience of my career was playing the Olympics, and one of the most rewarding parts of my career was that camaraderie with my national team. I still am friends with all those guys. We still mean a lot. That feeling never goes away. The time we spent together was super important. For these guys to experience that, I think would be incredibly worthwhile. And and the reality is they have a chance to medal. I mean, I know the international game's different, so they got to play and commit and keep going to get on that level, regardless of how talented they are. But it would be phenomenal for me to see them try to do that, but more. I want to see them have that connectivity with one another, because they're influencing the next generation. So for them to go through their career and leave their career, it's another feeling that you have the rest of your life having experienced that. So I would like that for them. I would like for our country to be in with a chance in international tournaments and competing for the podium. But frankly, I don't have a lot to do with it. I'm just here as a supporter and if needed, to be consulted with.
Yeah. Well, I hope they are able to gather all the troops, because I do think you guys can be a force to reckon with. And like you said, that feeling of playing for your country. And, I spoke with Kerry Walsh during my last episode, and that was one of the main things that she harped on, was the fact that she loved playing for her country and she loved seeing that flag. And I got that sense that it was like another, camaraderie with her partner that she was playing with, and a different level of experience and memories that will last forever. So you definitely bring up a great point.
Yeah. And I hope so for those guys.
Yeah, for sure. And other than basketball, we know that you're a huge fan of soccer, and also a diehard Tottenham fan, a part owner of the Vancouver Whitecaps, and you have a controlling stake with the Spanish soccer club Real Mallorca. How does it feel transitioning from being a professional player to now being an owner of a professional sports team?
It's a great education for me. I'm trying to learn that side of it. It's about the players and the product, right? So it's about supporting the players for a club to succeed, you want to build a mechanism that supports the players to reach their maximum. And then therefore your product is great.
Yeah.
And therefore your fans are engaged and you have a healthy, successful business. So to come at it from that side of it is interesting, trying to refine your processes and methodology and learning about all those components of, I would say, the business, which it is partly the business, but it's more indirectly, it's refining your philosophy, methodology, ideology, and then executing. And that's an education for me, something I've really enjoyed. And it's another way to not only learn, but also to share the values and wisdom you gain that I was able to gain playing 18 years in the NBA.
I think that's great. And if you were able to go back in time, would you choose to play soccer or would you stick with basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I love soccer, love it. Played as a kid, was a good young player. There wasn't the aspirational quality in our community, like to be a professional soccer player back then, it was either kind of semi-pro in North America or it was go to Europe. So it was so far away, whereas basketball is like college games on TV, NBA games on TV. You could go drive, for me, I could drive down to Seattle 2-3 hours and watch the Sonics. And so there was a lot more connectivity, and the culture here was much more driven by Michael Jordan and Nike and things like that, that when you're a 13-year-old kid, when I picked up the game, were, incredibly exciting and powerful, symbols. So I guess what I'm saying is that, like, in my heart and dreams, it'd be amazing to have been a professional soccer player and experience that, the difference in the culture of that, where, playing for the top clubs, you walk out on the field and the fans are screaming and singing before the game's even started. You don't really experience that in the NBA very often. So that would have been incredible, and I love the sport. Having said that, I mean, I just said there's zero doubt that I chose a great path and had an incredibly rewarding career because I played with so many great teammates, coaches, traveled the world, was in unique positions and opportunities on and off the court. And so I could never, kind of look over that and how fortunate I was.
Yeah. Well, I know you also played hockey, you also played rugby and even tennis. And, I've seen a few of your teammates at Santa Clara University say, sometimes after practice, you would go over to the tennis court and you would look like you could be a part of the tennis team. So I'm pretty sure whatever sport you were to choose, I'm sure you would have been great at it.
You're lying. You're lying.
Now, Steve, I want to talk about your foundation, the Steve Nash Foundation, Growing Health in Kids. It works to increase access to critical need resources for children in underserved communities. The foundation also dedicates its attention towards children's needs based on family dynamics to create lasting improvements in a child's social and academic performance. What inspired you to form this foundation, and what impact has it had on you and the people that it services?
I think I grew up with parents who taught us that inequality, a search for equality in the world, that, there is great inequality, but that doesn't mean that we should, turn our backs on those less fortunate, or we should have a sense of community, a sense of compassion and empathy for people. And so I had those principles as a kid in my household. So I always realized how fortunate I was. I realized how much, misfortune there was for people in communities around the world. So, I think one, I had that feeling of being fortunate, wanting to help. And two, when you kind of acquire the platform of being an NBA player, you have the power to help more people, due to the visibility, the ability to put teams together or raise money or throw events or bring attention to causes. So it just felt like an opportunity that I couldn't turn down consciously. It was like, I have to do something else, not just basketball. So that was really the genesis of it.
Mm-hmm. And Steve, you also have had the opportunity to be outspoken when it comes to political and social concerns here in the U.S. You're dedicated to the overall well-being of the human race. I personally want to commend you for speaking out on behalf of the Black Lives Matter movement. What are your thoughts on the turmoil that we've seen our country endure due to the police brutality and systemic inequality?
A lot. I mean, it's heartbreak. It's disgusting. It is depressing when you think about this coming to a head at this point in time, now, civil rights have been fought for decades, centuries. We're going 400 years back to, the beginning of slavery and all the things that have transpired since abolishing the slaves. The kind of, it's not covert, but let's call it the covert agencies of racism over the last, however many years. I want to say I get caught feeling very depressed about the state of the country, feeling like there's more than one America. What makes America beautiful to me is the diversity, the inclusion, seeking as much meritocracy as possible. And then you realize there's an America that is the opposite, that wants the status quo, that is fearful of diversity, that, whether covert or overt, are racist and want to protect their position. That is incredibly depressing to realize that we're not all reading from the same book here. Having said that, like, these issues didn't just appear, as we know.
Yeah.
So when I try to flip it and be positive, I see an opportunity right now. Instead of staying depressed or down because of the disgusting, issues we're facing on a daily basis, let's look at, this is coming to a head. In a sense, there's a civil war on the streets right now. And, without it being mass war, it is being waged, and it's coming to a head, and there's an opportunity to grow from it. Whether that I don't know that we're going to convince the people with the opposing view to all of a sudden see the world through our prism. And it's not fair, in a sense, to think that my prism is the way everyone else should see the world. Having said that, what's the mechanism that creates as much opportunity and equality for the way you want to live or the values you uphold? Voting. So if nothing else, if we can't convince or find a way that our community can be more open-minded and equal, we can change the way we approach politics and voting, and the way we get impacted, the way we get involved, the way we support. So who knows how or what change will come, and who knows how bad this will get before we get there. But it's a pivotal time, and it's a time to be bold, strong, and opportunistic, to create change, rather than become depressed and arrest your own impetus in this fight, because it looks so disparate.
And I think, especially in professional basketball, I know one of the reasons we were debating whether we were gonna have the bubbles, because players were concerned about what was going on out there in the communities, out there in the world, especially with Breonna Taylor, with there being no charges, and with George Floyd with the knee being in his neck. But ultimately, they decided to go play in the bubble, and they're speaking up on their behalf. Any chance they get, they're using it as a platform to speak on the Black Lives Matter movement. And I know with the recent acts of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Washington, being shot in his back 7 times, obviously now you see the NBA just boycotted yesterday. And I think just as right before we started this interview, they decided to carry on with the rest of the NBA season. But what are your thoughts on how Adam Silver, the commissioner, and the players of the NBA have been moving forward with the recent acts of systemic inequality and the police brutality?
Well, I'm incredibly proud of the league, the players. Adam Silver is incredible. He's given the players a platform to use their voice instead of trying to control his assets, so to speak, and his product. He's allowed them to be human beings. So that's a sign of equality and partnership rather than subordination. And so I think he's been incredibly powerful and impactful in this cause, and allowing the players and promoting that. It's not going to be easy for him all the time. I mean, he can open the bag a little bit and give them that freedom. And then there's times where it's going to be incredibly awkward, right? Because you have shareholders and sponsors and you're running a business. But he's always been able to manage that and put humanity side by side or ahead of business. So he's been incredible. The players have grown their voice. Our league is filled with thoughtful, intelligent players who have a responsibility that they feel to their communities. I'm proud of them. It's, people want, well, what's the plan? What's the plan? You're okay. Yesterday you went on strike. We're back playing now. Well, what was the strike for? Well, what's the plan going forward? You know what? That's not here for us to judge. This does not fall on an NBA player solely. And so their plan and their steps, yeah, I would love it if they had a detailed, attainable plan that they could execute. Wonderful. No one's been able to do that. So why should NBA players be judged on that? What they are doing is using their voice, creating change, demanding of the league and owners to allow the platform to express their desires. I mean, this is a global league in business that is predominantly Black. I mean, it is in a perfect position in many ways to lead and to be the voice, to open people's eyes. As generations go, racism is taught. We're not born with that. So I think we're not going to convince everyone that their behavior is racist. There's a lot of people that don't believe it is.
Exactly.
But we are trying to shine light that the only way to not be racist is to be anti-racist and be vigilant about it. And so the players are doing that. They're going to convert generations of younger people to think in a slightly different way, to behave in a slightly different way. And I think it's incredibly powerful, necessary. And let's hope there is, a clarity to an ever-evolving plan of action. But I think simply getting the message out there, using their voice, showing this is important, this is human, and let's say one actionable beyond all the indirect, actionables from that platform is, can we get people to vote? Can we create more voting sites, more opportunity? Can we register more people? How many ways can we just affect that? Let alone put pressure on owners and governors and mayors to change, to use their power to change, to have police reform, education reform, to allocation of dollars. I mean, you know how deep we can go in this. I saw a study yesterday that African Americans' homes were appraised at a much lower value, and maybe some of the examples are anecdotal, but there was definitely a correlation in a study to the devaluation of a home because of the color of someone's skin, and then they did it with a mixed race couple, valued someone's home at let's say $500,000. Then they had an appraiser come back in with only the white partner in the house without any of the African-American family portraits. The home was valued at like $700,000.
Wow.
I mean, when you're talking about interest rates and loans and access to capital to create ownership, I mean, it's so deep, and there's education and food deserts, and it goes back systemically for many, many years. And there's just new, and it just changed. The game just the goalposts get moved. And so how can we create that equality? The first step, I think, is through voting and education reform. Obviously, police reform would be wonderful too. We just have to be smart, and defunding the police is the wrong term.
Yeah, it's the wrong term. Yeah.
We want to create a better police force.
Exactly.
Right? Defunding means it makes especially the antagonists say, what? No police, no control, no governance, no safety, no security. No, that's not what we're saying. And so, it's really about being smart, being strategic, and the NBA, I think, is trying its best in its players as well to not just speak their mind, but to follow through with actionables, as we've seen lots of guys do, whether it's Lloyd Pierce and the Hawks making their training and playing for center, a voting center, whether it's Chris Paul getting, and LeBron James and many others doing, registering people to vote and getting people to the polls. Like, those are real actionables that are making a difference, and they're only going to grow in time. So I'm incredibly proud. I'm sorry if I went off a little bit on this, but it's a dark place in my life, and I don't have to experience the racism.
Yeah.
It's disheartening and heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, don't be sorry. This was the question that I was hoping that, you would go all out for, because it's well deserved, and we're going through tough times, as you can tell. And, that stigma that they have on basketball players to just shut up and dribble. I think that's long gone, and I'm happy that the players have, stuck with that and proven to use their platform, not just to be amazing basketball players, not just to be great entertainers, but to speak out on problems that matter and to be there for their own communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Steve, I'll end with this last question, as I do with all my guests. What is the greatest lesson you've learned in life, and how has it helped you?
You ask me all these questions, and I don't know I have an answer for. I mean, the greatest lesson I've learned in life, I think is somewhere tied in compassion and empathy, and realizing it's not all about you. We're wired to survive and to fulfill our own needs and wants. But if you get stuck in that silo of self, it can be, it can stunt your growth, development, happiness. I think looking more broadly at the greater good and the community, and trying to be in whatever form you can benefit others is the way to live. And to see the best in people, or to encourage and provoke people's best qualities and characteristics is a way to have longevity and happiness, reward, and riches that are intangible. So somewhere in there, I think is the greatest lesson in life, and most important thing, I think, to me.
Hey, that's perfect, straight from the heart, and I think that's something that we can all choose to live our lives by as we continue to move forward. Well, Steve, I just want to say thank you for being an inspiration to me as a young kid, but also being an inspiration to me as I signed those papers to attend Santa Clara University. We appreciate you spending time with us today. And of course, we appreciate everything you do both on and off the court.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work, man. It's fun watching you develop all these interests and skills, not just on the court, but off the court. So it was a pleasure, my man.
No problem. And to my audience, thanks for tuning in to the season 1 finale of JB & Co. Stay safe. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you for season 2.